We will call this December 3rd, 2020 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee meeting to order. It is 2:30. Craig, roll call for us.
Sir. Mr. Van Hove.
Present.
Mr. Stichik.
Present, sorry.
Okay. Ms. Kilcoyne.
Present.
Mr. Lindemood.
Present.
Ms. Acton.
Present.
Ms. McNulty. Okay, Mr. Linnell.
Present.
Mr. Rebuffo.
Present.
Mr. Colhays. Not see on there. Mr. Alimi.
Present.
Okay. And Mr. Craps is excused, and that's why we are fortunate to have our Vice Chair, Mr. Van Hove, chairing today. So you have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Will you now do the public involvement announcement for us, please?
Yes, all AMATS meetings are open to the public. The public will be invited to comment for each business item. If we have, we'll have presentation first by staff or a consultant, then the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment. As you know, we're doing the public's opportunity to join the meeting through the Teams Live, and there is that 30 to 40 second lag between the two processes. So we'll have to wait that little bit just to make sure we're catching up to the folks that are on Teams Live.
Thank you. Moving on, do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve. This is Brian Lindemood.
Yeah, Steve Rebuffo, I'll second.
Do we have any changes? Seeing none, hearing none. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, agenda is approved. There we go. We have before us the November 5th, 2020 minutes for approval. Do we have a motion for adoption?
Adeyemi Alimi, I move to approve.
This is Michelle McNulty. I second.
Thank you. Do we have any suggested changes? Hearing none, are there any objections to adopting the minutes? Hearing none, the November 5th, 2020 minutes are approved. Moving on to agenda item 5A, non-motorized plan public review draft. Craig, will you or your staff be presenting?
Well, I will start. I just want to make sure, do we see the item 5A up on your screens?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. I was hopeful. Usually Aaron is running this part of the program or Christine now, but just wanted to make sure it's showing since I'm doing it from my desk. Before I go farther, I want to make sure that obviously we just heard Ms. McNulty second promotion on the minutes, just to want the record to reflect that she has joined us already. So before we move on to this, just want a reminder what we're asking the committee to do here, and Joni will go through this in detail here in just a moment. What we're asking the committee to do is recommend this to go out, the non-motorized plan to go out for a 60-day public review. We've done internal review for a while, and she'll go over that in detail, but we're asking you folks to recommend to the policy committee to get released for a 60-day public review comment period. So with that, I will turn this over to Joni, who I see is on the line, which is good.
Excellent. Thank you, Craig. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, yep.
Okay, great. First thing I'm going to try and do is share my screen here, which is always unsettling. Let me try and share this. Can everyone see this presentation on your screens?
Yes, I
Yes,
can.
Jenny.
Oh, excellent. Yay, I'm so glad that worked. Okay. Well, This presentation, a lot of you have probably seen before, but it's been several months since you've seen it. So I wanted to give it again. I'm going to try to be fast because I know we have a lot on the agenda today. But basically, again, like Craig mentioned, what we're asking you to do today is to approve this non-motorized plan public review draft for a 60-day public review period, in which time we will have 2 more advisory group meetings, as well as an open house, a public open house. And just to give you a little bit of background, we have been working on this plan for over 3 years. We have had over 3,600 folks participate in our public involvement for the plan in a number of different ways, which I'll highlight in our public involvement chapter. This committee has had 2 work sessions on the plan. We've also had 2 special committee sessions with some selected transportation agency groups to go over specific concerns and comments, which we've answered. We collected over 400 internal agency review comments and responded to each of those. You'll see in the attached Excel table that we shared with you today. So, and we can go over that at the end of this presentation. Feel free to stop me if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna blast through this. And I apologize ahead of time if my dogs bark. I put them in the bedroom, but you never know. So, okay. So again, our team is made up of our lead consultant, Alta Planning and Design. They are non-motorized national planning experts. They were our lead. We had 2 great local consulting firms helping us out. R&M were fantastic. And then Huddle, our public involvement folks. I'm just going to give brief highlights from each of these chapters. We've got 7 chapters. Introduction, existing conditions, public involvement chapter, network development explains how we decided to make recommendations for the facilities you see in the document. The prioritization chapter, chapter 5, is all about how we came to the consensus that certain projects should be prioritized over other ones. And then implementation chapter, and then finally our design chapter. So chapter 1 begins with looking at all of our non-motorized facilities. We have grouped them into 3 categories. I do want to say that one of the big comments we received in the first round was that a lot of folks felt that the plan was very bicycle centric. And so we've made some adjustments in the plan. We also wanted to point out that all the recommendations that we provide for the shared use path network serve both bicycles and pedestrians. Also, quite a few of our bicycle recommendations also serve pedestrians as well, and I'll go into that more in detail in a little bit. But our goals for the PED network were basically to identify priority corridors, provide flexible implementation, improve safety and connectivity. Bike network goals were closing the existing gaps we found, providing on-street facilities. We've got a great off-street network already. We want to beef up our on-street facilities and connecting our existing and planned infrastructure. And then the shared use path network goals were connecting to existing bike and ped routes, developing off-street connections to low-stress routes, and serving recreation and transportation. This is our AMATS boundary on the left, so all the facilities that we're recommending are within this area. These are the facility types we have recommended on the right. They include sidewalks, enhanced shared roadways, which include yield roadways and bicycle boulevards, which I'll be explaining in chapter 4. Separated bikeways, which include buffered bicycle lanes and protected bicycle lanes, and then shared use pathways and sidewalk and side paths, equestrian trails, and then some supplemental bike facilities. So first thing we did was develop a vision statement. This was done in conjunction with all of our advisory groups, our big public workshop that we had at the beginning. We had a lot of interagency input for this. I'll just read it, but it's Anchorage is a world-class northern city that has an integrated network of routes accessible for people of all ages and abilities to walk, roll, or glide safely on shared use pathways and streets. And with that vision statement, we had 7 goals which you can read here, and I won't read all of them since we're trying to do this a little bit quicker. Chapter 2 gets into our existing conditions. So first thing we did was look at all of the plans and policies that we have adopted currently and start with that. We also did a peer city review. We looked at 5 winter cities. We looked at Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Salt Lake City, Utah, Calgary, Alberta, and Montreal, Quebec. And the main reason for this peer city review was to try and find out what other cities were doing successfully to improve their non-motorized facilities, specifically for winter cities, and then find out if we could do some of those same things here. So we did have several takeaways from that peer city review, and I won't read all over or read these again, but there was a lot of helpful data that we collected that we then implemented into our plan. Existing conditions also did a look at what we have on the ground already. So here's a map showing the bike network that we were able to establish, showing our existing bike boulevards, our bicycle lanes, our paved shoulder bikeways, and then primary and secondary shared use pathways. In addition to that, we looked at the Vision Zero data from the Anchorage Vision Zero plan, and that was super helpful for us to identify high crash corridors, and we implemented that in prioritization of our projects, which we'll talk about later in Chapter 5. We also did a level of traffic stress analysis. This LTS study looks at posted speed limit, street width, if there's bicycle lanes, and what the character of those bike lanes are. It assesses a value from 1 to 4, 1 being the lowest stress, 4 being the highest stress. And that was, again, incorporated into our prioritization matrix, which I'll show later. We also did demand analysis. This data analysis looked at where folks live, work, play, shop, access transit, and go to school. This demand analysis shows the concentrations in Anchorage where we have higher demand, where folks are needing to use those trails and bike and ped facilities more. They actually also correspond heavily to the higher stress roadways that you saw in the map prior in this slide. So, so that was an interesting find. We also looked at health and equity. These are the health indicators we saw. And I'll show the equity map in a second, but in general, the areas that we saw, greater prevalence of poor health were also the areas where we saw low equity scores, and these are our equity indicator maps. The equity indicators were age, income, if folks could speak very good English, if they're white or non-white, excuse me, their education level, and if they had access to a vehicle. And all of these indicators put together showed a composite score that was then generated to put together this map. And if you can see, this map is really key because it shows us where our most vulnerable populations in Anchorage currently exist. And that's important in non-motorized planning because we need to see where those areas are so that we can plan for them. These are the folks who depend heavily on our bike and ped network and our access to transit. So that's existing conditions. Chapter 3 is getting into our public involvement. We had a very robust public involvement. Like I mentioned earlier, we had a big kickoff workshop in the beginning, a lot of presentations, lots of mobile meetings, numerous stakeholder interviews. We did a field data collection, or a lot of field data collection with an online map and an app. We did walk audits, and we did an online community survey as well. This was sort of the timeline of our public involvement. I just want to show the web map that was created. We put the web map up. It was up from November 2017 to June 2018, and during that time we had over 200 spot and corridor locations identified by the public, identifying areas where they felt there was a safety concern, there was a missing connection, there was a facility concern, or a connectivity and access issue. So that was very helpful, and that data went into our prioritization matrix as well. In addition, we had advisory committees. I mentioned earlier, we had 2, a citizens advisory group and an agency advisory group. We also had mobile meetings. The folks or the agencies on the left are the ones that we had mobile meetings with, and we had some key takeaways. I'm just going to read these because I feel like these are important, but we did find that there was a desire within the community for more non-motorized infrastructure, improving our maintenance, increasing safety, prioritizing snow removal, connecting to transit, and increasing connectivity. And the last thing here for our public involvement, we did do a winter maintenance forum, and we're actually set to do another one at the end of this public participation. A 60-day release that we're asking for. And that was very helpful. We had speakers from municipal maintenance and operation, DOT maintenance and operation, and parks. We had well attended. We had a lot of policy folks there, advocacy group folks, lots of transportation professionals. And it was just, we got a lot of good data, and we're hoping to do another one here because I think we can always look to improve our maintenance. And it's so important for winter cities to do that. So that gets us into chapter 4. So basically the last 2 chapters, all of that data came together and we were able to propose some actual projects. This is a map of our proposed bicycle network. It includes enhanced shared roadways in purple. You can see there the separated bikeways are orange and shared use pathways are green. And I'll go into what those are in just a sec. Is that my next slide? Yeah, it is. So anyways, I just want to explain because I think we're throwing out some new terminology. But so for enhanced shared roadway, that's basically 2 different types. It's a yield roadway, which you see on the left there, or bicycle boulevard. Both of these we have in Anchorage currently. The yield roadway is something kind of like a Chugach way. It's comfortable. The way it's set up is comfortable. It doesn't have any markings, but it's a comfortable space for bikes and peds to operate in conjunction with cars. A bike boulevard, like the one we have on 10th Avenue, is generally a low traffic volume boulevard. It's posted speed of 25 miles per hour, and there's usually some wayfinding signage attached there so folks know they're on a boulevard. The other type we have for bikes is separated bikeway. These include buffered bicycle lanes. So we have a really nice one that just went up on Peterkin last fall that we've already biked. It's different than a bike lane. It's got at least an 18-inch painted buffer there, and it actually makes quite a bit of difference when you're cycling on it as far as comfort. And then protected bike lanes. This is a bike lane that's on street, but is protected by a painted buffer and some sort of physical barrier, such as a delineator or curb or planters. And then lastly, in our bike network, we have shared use pathways. Again, all of these shared use pathways are improving facilities for peds as well, or pedestrians as well. So shared use pathway, what we see on the left, which is our great trail system, Tony Nose Culture Trail, Truster Creek, all of our great separate or shared use pathways that we've got. Side path is a shared use pathway, but it's different in that it runs adjacent to or parallel to an existing roadway. But these are all benefit both facilities for bikes and pedestrians. And then for our pedestrian network, again, and I won't go into all the details about why, but we didn't recommend specific projects. We recommended corridors, and we were able to separate out using our data primary and secondary corridors to focus on. These incorporated the Vision Zero data, the areas of high demand and high need, and the equity data. and proximity to transit stops. So that sort of wraps up chapter 4. We're zipping along here, chapter 5. So we want to take all of what we just recommended and then prioritize it. So what that does is make it easier for us and AMATs to figure out what to fund, how we can get the most bang for our buck, and also where we can make the most difference for the most vulnerable folks. So this graphic shows the prioritization criteria that we chose, and I sort of depicted it in a way to help people see what was weighted the heaviest, or the order of weighting. So connectivity was weighted the strongest. Health, equity, gap closure, and safety are all weighted about the same. And then public support, which is, did we find support during the planning process for this project? And then previous support basically is, was this project found in a previous plan that we studied? And all of those criteria put together gave us a score that we then used to weight that project and prioritize it. So I'm not going to go through this table because I try to go through it and it confuses me sometimes, but it's basically, the matrix basically shows you how we weighted each project by looking at the description, the source, you know, where it's coming from, and then whether it's within a quarter or a half mile or not close to this particular source. And then that gives it a score of high, medium, or low. If you have questions on that later, please ask me, we can pull that up again. So basically, all of that leads to this prioritization map. And so we have the projects that we recommended before that we saw on the network map, but now they're prioritized. So we see which ones are we really need to focus on in red, medium is yellow or orange, and then low priority is blue. And we were able to do that as well for the pedestrian corridors. And that's what gets us into chapter 6. This chapter is really key because I think the implementation chapter is the most important chapter as a planner. We don't want our plans to sit on the shelf. Really want them to be used. And one of the most important things we felt like needed to happen with this plan is we need to give people a realistic idea of what's involved when we recommend a particular facility type of project be constructed or planned. So we had our consultants choose 6 different project examples. They're all a different facility type. And then for each of those projects in this chapter, we had them, and this was largely R&M, they did just a great job with this, but we had them come up with a project description and locator map, discuss some challenges with that particular type of project, come up with a design, give us a cost estimate, a maintenance cost estimate, give us some funding options and a timeline. So when we're looking to recommend stuff, we have more of a realistic idea of what all that's going to entail and cost. Here's an example from the chapter of the intersection project example. So 10th Avenue and Cordova Street. You can see the design work that went into this. You can also see the project challenges listed here, and then the maintenance cost estimate. Also comes along with a project cost estimate and funding options and some implementation, sussing out of what implementation might look like. For the project cost option, we were able to include engineering, construction, utility relocation, right-of-way acquisition, and even contingency costs into these estimated costs. And these are in 2018 dollars, but hopefully, we can, I don't know, but hopefully we can better estimate what with inflation and everything, what the cost could be in current day as we move forward. Lastly, in our implementation chapter, we have policy recommendations that also are associated with goals and then priority action recommendations. We have program recommendations for increasing or improving outreach and education. And then lastly, and most importantly, we have an implementation matrix that shows a clear action in the first column there, a related policy goal that it's referring to or trying to address, funding sources, potential funding sources, and then potential implementation partners. And then also if it should be immediate, you know, first 1 to 2 years, a midterm project or a long-term project. So again, this is really helpful for us and the public and moving forward. And then chapter 7, we're going to zip through this chapter. This is pretty, just a lot of pictures. So we started out by providing guidance, national, state, and local guidance that exists already for folks, just as reference. The consultants did a really nice job of illustrating user needs, pedestrians, bicyclists, and wheelchair users, and other non-motorized users. Also, we have design guidance for all the facility types we recommend in the plan, and I especially like this bicycle facility selection tool on the right, which shows you, you know, for a person who's a non-transportation person, is a nice way to see, okay, what's the posted speed on the x-axis here, and then, okay, what's the average daily traffic on the left, and to see what type of bike facility might be reasonable to recommend given that information. And that's just a helpful tool. I think that will really help folks. We also have intersection guidance in our design guide chapter, looking at some crossing types. We have some grade separated intersection treatment examples and some signalization examples as bike parking, signage and wayfinding examples, and we have a maintenance section. And then finally we have an appendices, which going through our meetings earlier, we wanted to include treatments that are maybe more progressive, but that we don't have adopted yet. So we've got a table in the appendices of the treatments that aren't yet approved, just so that the public is clear. You know, if they see something in the plan, you know, we're clear on, okay, well, you might see it in the plan, but it's not approved yet. So there's a process before that could be used. We also have meeting minutes in there and an acronym glossary, and that wraps my presentation. I don't know how long that took, but hopefully about 15 minutes. So I'll take any questions now, or we can go over the comment response table, whatever the committee would like to do.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
You have a hand up from Mr. Lindemood.
Go ahead, Mr. Lindemood.
Hi, I got, thanks, Joni. That was really informative as I've read through this a couple times. I do have 2 questions. First question is, as I look through the proposed bike network, there was stuff that was in non-motorized things, elements of the Spinard area plan that I don't see in this plan. And so I'm not sure why that is, or whether that was an oversight or.
Okay, is there a specific, can you mention anything specific that?
Well, the reason I noticed is they proposed having a trail down our right of way, basically between roughly where Tudor hits Minnesota and the coastal trail.
Okay.
And it's not shown in here at all. And I don't know if there are others, but I did notice that one.
Okay, well I'm thinking that was probably an oversight. We did have, that's unfortunate, because Alta Planning and Design was they're the consultant on the Spinard Corridor plan as well. So we were hoping that wouldn't happen, but we are happy to take a look at that and fix that.
Okay.
If you send it to us.
Yeah, I've got, a couple other little things that are just mostly happy to glad sort of stuff. I won't bother you with those. But the other major question I had is the old bicycle plan had both the Chester and the Campbell Creek trails as part of their network, but the proposed network that's in here does not have those shown. Again, is that just a graphical error, or is it the intent to pull them out?
They should be. Are you look which? Let me see. Which? Let me grab the planning document and get that up here for folks to see. See if you
And
can.
to be fair, I'm looking at little teeny tiny maps on, 11 by 17, but
Yeah.
they show it as pedestrian. But if I look at the priority bicycle network, they're not shown. But there's other issues with that map.
Okay. Let me pull it. Can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
You can look at, well, I mean, you can go back into to the proposed one, which is in
Okay.
chapter 5 or 4 or something.
Let me see. So here is the priority bicycle network.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, I see. It is in there. It's just in gray. I guess when I printed it out, the gray sort of blended with the green.
Oh, okay. Yes. My apologies about that. I feel like looking at this map, it's probably not, it's not a priority because it's not going to show up as high on the priority network just because it is already such a comfortable trail. But
And when
show it on there.
And when we talk about priorities, we're talking about improvements.
Yeah, so
Okay.
where do we need to spend our dollars to make the most impact
Okay.
for safety and the other criteria?
Okay. That gets me.
Yeah.
Those are the biggies I had. I'll not worry about these others.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Also, I'm sorry, the public was invited to comment. Are there any comments by the public? And we'll give it a few minutes, a few seconds here. All right. For my clarification, Craig, are you timing that or is someone else?
This is Christine. I timed it and there are no comments.
Thank you. Would any members of the policy committee listening in like to comment?
Nothing from Weddleton. Thanks for the presentation.
I have one question. This is Wolfgang.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sir.
Yeah, Joni, I know that the policy committee last month has adopted moving forward with a safety study for the Anchorage area. And I'm wondering how you see that being incorporated into a non-motorized plan updates in the future.
Well, that's a great question. So that was it last month. I did not know about that.
It's in the, there's a proposal in the tip that is the amendment that we have to add in a safety plan. And so that would be sometime next year to be working on that plan.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there will be proposals out of that that include things that would improve safety for the non-motorized traveling public. And obviously that's something that should, when we get an opportunity to update this non-motorized plan in however many years from now, we would want to take that into account. But I'm sure that there will be specific projects and policies, et cetera, in the safety plan that will address non-motorized travel.
Okay. Yeah, and from my standpoint as a planner, and we'll have control of this document, we could always, if there were significant safety updates that we wanted to put in, we could always do an amendment to this plan and retrofit it to reflect those safety improvement, or if there's policies or whatever comes out of that. I'm sure we can amend this plan to reflect those.
All right, thank you, Joni.
Sure.
Real quickly before we move on, Ms. Kilcoyle is asking, Wolfgang, could you repeat your question, please?
Right, certainly the AMATS policy committee last month approved moving forward with a safety study I think Mr. Lyons spoke to incorporating that into the next year's action items work plan. The idea is that as we develop studies or area plans within the municipal planning organization, that they're all linked and incorporated and coordinated so that as we move forward with new project nominations, studies like the safety study or the non-motorized plan can be coupled and prioritized in our TIP and in our MTP in a coordinated fashion. So this safety study is a new thing moving forward, and ideally it would be coordinated with projects identified in the plan, other plans like the non-motorized plan. So when we're scoring those in the future for TIPs and MTPs, we can take that into consideration.
Thank you. All right, moving on. What is the will of the committee? Any questions or any motions by the committee?
This is Matt Stichik. I will recommend to the policy committee for 60-day public release of the non-motorized plan.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
This is John. I'll
second.
I'm sorry, there were a couple of you at the same time.
I heard Mr. Linnell.
Thank you. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 5B, the AMATS BPAC nominee. Greg, would you present on this?
Yes, hopefully you see the memo up on your screen.
Yes.
Okay, so we have an opening on our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for one of the public member seats. And the committee and Joni and I have had some discussions about who might be a good choice. And the suggestion was C.B. Brady, who is a lifelong Alaskan, was in the construction industry for many years and came down with, I believe it's called retinitis pigmentosa, but it's a degenerative eye disease that leads to blindness. He has kind of tunnel vision right now. He is currently the executive director for the Alaska Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And he, if you received already our copy of the Urban Streets magazine that Joni and AMATS do, he is the cover boy for that. And there's an article in there talking about his experiences traversing the streets of Anchorage that he used to run around as a kid and drive around as an adult, and now has to get around using either walking or public transportation. So he's got a great set of experiences and a great perspective to come to the committee and bring to the committee in a lot of ways. So we are recommending his appointment to one of the public member seats on the Bike and Ped Committee.
Thank you, Craig. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none. Are there any questions from the public? And we'll give it a few seconds. Hearing none. Would any members of the policy committee listening like to make a comment?
None from Weddleton.
Thank you. Again, hearing none. What is the will of the committee?
This is John Linnell. I'll recommend that his name be forwarded to the policy committee for review and approval.
Thank you, John.
This is Adeyemi Halimi. I second.
Thank you, Mr. Alimi. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Moving on to agenda item 5C, the Seward Highway to Glen Highway Pell resolution. Craig, are you presenting on this?
I will. So we had this resolution before us last month. It originally went to the policy committee and they asked for the technical advisory committee to review and give their thoughts on it. It came to the TAC last month and it was tabled until this month's committee meeting so that we could have a joint work session on the resolution. We had that joint work session, lots of discussion, etc. And so because it was tabled to this meeting, it is now back before you to act upon in one way or another.
Thank you, Craig. And just to be clear, I'll throw a couple of 2 cents worth in here. This issue that we're discussing is the resolution, of course, that was forwarded to the policy committee, which I think, first of all, is somewhat procedurally incorrect. And because of that, the policy committee then referred it back to the TAC for additional information and review. As Craig pointed out, that information was provided in both the form of a white paper and a joint work session. And in both the white paper and the joint work session, it was pointed out that there were procedural flaws as well as some difficulties in meeting the request of the resolution. The resolution requests that some leftover funding from the PAL project be used to initiate a tiered environmental impact statement. At this time, I have conversed with the project manager. There is no leftover funding. In fact, the PAL RFP is still in negotiations, and they are looking at the potential of needing additional funding in order to award that RFP. Latest estimates have it at about 5.3 million. Also, to initiate environmental actions takes a project in either the tip or the STIP. Another difficulty, there are no projects in either of those two plans at this time. I would also just remind again, as I stated, I think resolutions of this nature should come before the TAC prior to being sent to the policy committee so that discussions like this for review and technical work can be done and recommended to the policy committee for future happenings. That being said, are there any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Wells, I've seen your hand up.
Yep. My hand up. Would you like me to speak now?
I was just going to say, I apologize. We'll get to you in a second, sir.
No, that's fine. When time is ready. I just want to let you know I'm here.
Very good. Hearing no comments from the committee, we'll give the opportunity for anybody in the public to present any questions or comments. And we will pause for a few seconds. Hearing none, would any members of the policy committee listening in like to comment? Mr. Weldon?
Sure, thanks. I think I want to address a number of things, but one, the idea that anything like this should go to the TAC, and I agree with that. But I think as a member of the policy committee, when we brought it forward, then we sent it to you guys. So the intent was to have you guys look at it and not essentially we value your input, and particularly at the TAC meeting and then the joint work session we had was a tremendous education for those of us who are not professionals, and appreciate all your time teaching us. And so my intent is to provide an S version, which would be more in line with the realities that we learned at that work session, but still make the fundamental point that we really need to get clarity as much as we can as soon as possible for that corridor, for the sake of the property owners and residents of that particular corridor. And that I should have something ready, hopefully, to bring to for sure for the policy committee in December. And that is something we can certainly expect at that point to refer back to the TAC.
Thank you, sir.
So next I would say, so your route on this thing, the one in front of you now, could be we don't like it and reject it, would be perfectly fine, and we'll move on with the revised version, or recommend that it be revised, and that's what will be coming.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Weddleton. What is the will of the committee?
Based on the information provided by Mr. Weddleton, recommend TAC not forward the AMATS resolution 2020-02 to the PC and wait for a revised version to come back to the TAC.
This is like me. Oh, Matt, go ahead.
No, you got it.
This is DME, Alimi. I second.
Thank you, Mr. Alimi. Are there any objections to approval of the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Moving on to agenda item 5D, AMATS resolution supporting transit grant application. Craig, will you be presenting on this one as well?
I will start, and then probably Ms. Acton will be able to join in afterwards. So this basically is the Municipal Public Transportation Department has a grant application that they're putting in, and part of that includes, I think as it says at the bottom of here, that the resolution of the AMATS Policy Committee is required as part of the Coordinated Transportation Plan and the grant application, and so they're asking us to support their grant application to help hopefully help them get one. So, Ms. Acton, if you have anything else to add to that, let's tell them what the grant is for.
I appreciate it. So this is an Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority grant that is ran through the State Transit Office located in Juneau. This is a grant that we apply for annually. I just caught a typo in it at the beginning. This is for state fiscal year 2022 rather than 2021, as it alludes to in the title of the supporting document. So I wanted to make note of that. We'll need to edit the resolution to reflect 2022. But essentially, there's $1 million available statewide for this funding. This funding allows us to provide transportation services via anchor rides for beneficiaries of the trust. And trust beneficiaries are identified as people with mental illness, developmental disabilities, Alzheimer's, other dementias, chronic alcoholism, and traumatic brain injuries. We provide roughly, let me pull up the stats real quick. We provide roughly 50,000 trips annually to the trust beneficiaries, and this grant is critical to our being able to do that. Our total project for this year, our ask for the grant is $300,000, and it comes along with a 20% match of local funds, which we've already identified. So our total project cost to be able to provide this service to the community is roughly $360,000. And we're just asking for the letter of support to be passed through to the policy committee so that we can get our grant application in with the required elements. And I believe the deadline is Monday, December 21st. So we are right on schedule with gathering our documents and getting things in line. So happy to answer any other questions that you may have about the application or about the funding.
Thank you. Craig, anything to add?
Oh, nothing except for we'll get that typo fixed before it gets to the policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, the public was invited to comment by notifying us of their desire to comment, but no such requests have been received. Would any member, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll give, are there any questions or comments from the public? And we will give them a few seconds to answer in.
Just Christine, there are no comments.
Whoa.
It's a bit aggressive.
Who was it that's undone the dishwasher the last couple of times? Restocked it?
All right, hearing none. Would any members of the policy committee listening in like to provide comment?
No comment.
None from Weddleton, thanks.
Thank you. What is the will of the committee?
This is Matt Stichek. I will move to recommend forwarding to the policy committee corrected resolution 2020-03, supporting application for the mental health trust funds for the transportation department.
This is Brian Lindemann. I'll second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion is approved. All right, are there any other action items?
None that I know of, sir.
Thank you. Moving right along. Moving on to project and plan updates. Are there any updates?
No, sir.
Excellent. General information updates. Are there any updates?
We have our fourth quarter OB report, which should be up on the screen now. Hopefully it's big enough for folks to read. Again, it is the fourth quarter one. We have different markers throughout the year where we have to be plus or minus within a certain percentage of our allocation. And obviously at the end of the year, which is the fourth quarter, we have to be at 0 at the bottom. So we, looking at this, you can see that we have the column D that says what's the additional obligation we still have to go to, and all those are zeros. So we've obligated all our funds that we were expecting to obligate by the fourth quarter, which is good. So if you go down to the very bottom here, you'll see in red there difference between what we had in the tip and what we were supposed to obligate is a 0. So we spent all the money that we were supposed to spend, which is good. We didn't lose any of it. If folks have questions about the projects that are in here, we can try and get those answered now between the folks who are on the phone, but we did what we were planning on doing this year. That's about it for the report.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. We spent all the money. That's a good thing.
We didn't slip to somebody else's pocket or go back to another stage.
Very good. All right. Are there any questions about the report? Seeing none, the floor is, excuse me, the floor is now open for comments from the committee. Do any of the committee members have any questions at this time? Seeing none, that concludes the meeting. We will gavel out. Thank you for your participation. The time is 3:24. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.